Hey everyone, I just wanted to do one more quick example of how to populate your databases with data, and I'm going to use a many-to-many relationship for this example. In this example, I have a project which just has a name. I have employees that have a first name and last name. And then in any project, you can have many employees that are part of that project, and an employee can be part of many different projects. So you have this intersection table in the middle with an ID for both the project and the employee. And this thing right here will just indicate if, actually let me capitalize this before I do anything. We'll just indicate whether a specific employee is a project manager for a specific project. So I'm going to forward engineer this, and then I'm going to generate fake data for it. And I want to go over specifically what it looks like to populate this table here in the middle with data. So with that, first I'm going to make sure that if I go back to this tab that says MySQL model, that I rename this to have my database name. I'm going to use my name so that it'll work, but just make sure you change that to be your name so that it'll work on your computer. I'm going to go into forward engineer. This should be the connection that's already existing for you. If not, be sure to just choose it up here. This is the one I want to work with. Click continue. You can just uncheck all of this stuff. You don't need to check anything else in there. Click continue. This should be checked by default. If it's not, check it. Go to continue. You should see some code to generate some tables. And I'm going to keep going through. It's going to connect to our database and create these tables for us. So then if we come back over here, if you click the refresh button up here, I should be able to see these example tables that I just created. So I have example employee project and example project employee. So just to make sure, employee. So look at that. So it's there, they're created, but there's no data in any of these tables. So I'm going to show doing this in Mockaroo, and then I'll show a quick example of doing this in TableConvert. So just to save time, I've already set this up. Right here I have, oops, that's misspelled, but I have the ID project and project name for a project. And with ID project, I'm just doing row numbers. I'm saying I want 10 of these to produce. And for project name, I don't want to come up with those. So I'm just telling it to pick a bunch of random words. So these don't really mean anything, but you can pretend that that means a project name. I'm just going to download this. Mine downloaded is mockdata 11 because I've downloaded a few of these files over the semester. Let me go back into here. I'm going to right click example project. Go to table data import wizard. I'm going to make sure that I grab the correct file here. Click next. I'm going to use existing table, example project. Next. And then I have this data here. That should import those 10 rows. So I'm going to select star there now. Oh, that's employees, so that still doesn't have anything. Let's make sure it got in there. Select star from example project. And there, I have 10 projects that I've created. I'm going to come back, and I've already set up something for an ID with employee with a first name and a last name. I want 30 of them. So that's going to look like this. So 30 employees with different first name and last names. Your real data will probably have more columns, but this is just an example. So I'm going to download that. That's mock data 12. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's go into example employee, right click it, table data import wizard. Click that. Then let's make sure we get the right file. File 12. I'm going to use the existing example employee table. Okay. And these are matching up. That's what it's going to look like as it goes in. ID employee, first name, last name. So I'm just going to click next. Give that some time to import. You can click show logs as it's going. And again, normally on our database, this is much faster. But we're on a very slow server. So let's do example employee. Okay, so all those names got in there. Then a question I've gotten a couple of times is whether or not this table, which I'll go over here, example project employee, because it's a many-to-many relationship, some people are asking whether or not you need to fill this with data, and you do. So when you forward engineer and it creates this table over here, let me go back to here. It will create this table with primary key and foreign key constraints, just as you specified it in your model, but it doesn't know which project has which employees matched up with them. There's no way that I can join these two together without populating example project employee with data. Right now it's still empty. So even though it knows that there should be a primary key and foreign key in example project employee, without actually specifically saying, okay, in project 1, employee 2 is part of that project, there's no way to connect them. So if you're doing something like that in Mockaroo, the way you'd want to do that is just having those IDs here. So I have ID project and ID employee. And I know that for project, I only made 10 projects. So that means the ID project is just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to be one of those numbers. So I'm making it a number type from 1 to 10, and it's just randomly choosing one of those numbers. Because this is fake data, I don't really care which of the projects it's choosing, but I care that it is a project with an ID from 1 to 10. If it's something outside of that range, it's not going to work because that's a project that wouldn't exist in my example project table. I only have 1 to 10 there. Same thing with ID employee, except when I generated those over here, I said the employees, I only want 30 of them. So that means ID employee only goes from 1 to 30. So I'm going to choose a random number between 1 and 30. And then for this extra thing that I added is project manager. I just want that to be a 1 every now and then. So I'm setting 90% of those to be blank, but that's less important. So for example, employee 13 is the project manager of project 6. And I'm going to set that to download 50 rows. So let's download that. And because I set this to be within the range that I specified of 1 to 10 and 1 to 30, when I go and input this, this should be totally good. It shouldn't upset the primary key and foreign key constraints in there. So let's import this data, and that was mock data 13. Let's open it up. So the ID project, ID employees matching up, and is project manager is in there. It won't show in this preview because there's only a few of them, but I'm just going to click next. And that is importing the data. It's going to take a second here since it's a little longer. Cool. So you'll notice as I'm scrolling through here, every now and then I got an error. And this is fine because this is how we're randomly generating data. It's actually not as big as an error as you might think, but it failed to import one of the rows. It says duplicate entry 44 for key example project employee primary. So this means the data, let's actually open up the file so I can show you what happened with it. If I opened up this, so I have 44 here. If I scroll down here, I have another 44. It just randomly happened to choose 4 and 4 twice. And the primary key is the combination of ID project and ID employee. So if I were to put that twice in here, it's actually going to make it so it skips this row. It's going to skip row 15 because 4 and 4 can't be duplicated because that's the primary key, and by definition primary keys cannot be repeated. So in this case where we're just making up fake data, that's actually not really much of a problem because we generated enough rows. We have 45 that ended up getting in there, so that's totally fine. And then it knows that his project manager was a int, or a tiny int, so automatically made the blanks 0, and then some of them are 1. So let's go for it. Now, since we've generated data that matches the project and employee, we can do something like this. Let's select the project name, and then the first name and last name from example project P. Let's join example project employee EPE on EP dot ID project is equal to EPE dot ID project. Then let's join our employees. Example employee EE on EE dot ID employee is equal to this table, example project employee EPE dot ID employee. So on project Labortis, Gayla Tills, and Royce Cramphorn, and Harriet Marsham are the employees assigned to this project. So we had all this data in there separately, but we didn't know which employees were assigned to which project here. But now we do. So we can write any kind of query we want. For example, let's say we only want those that are project managers. We only want to see those. So we can see that for quam and non, Dewitt and Gadman, Call Northeast are the project managers, and then there are 2 project managers for Torter ID project. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of this. One thing I could see coming up is that you might be doing a project and you want your data to actually be real. Or maybe the type of column that you're creating is something that's hard to create in Mockaroo. Another option that you can do with this is, let's actually just open up a new Excel file. Let's say we wanted to create some more employees. So we have ID employee, and we had first name, we had last name, and we already made 10 of them and we want to append to it. So let's make 3 more employees. So we'll do John, Jacob, Jingle, Stefan. Why not? So we create this data that we want to add to our table. And maybe you do the whole table like this, or your whole project like this. It's just easier to manually create it. That's totally fine. One way to easily make transform this into something that you can input into your database is to go to this website called TableConvert.com. So I'm going to say Excel as my data source, and I copied this, and I'm just going to paste it here. So you'll see that it automatically detects how this looks like in a spreadsheet form, like a table. And then down here, I can generate tables. I just choose SQL right here. In my case, I don't want to create a table because I already have it created. So I'm going to uncheck that, but I do need to tell it what the table name is. And in this case, my table over here is called example employee. So let's put that in there. This might work without doing quotes, but just to be safe, I'm going to do the MySQL quotes. You'll notice it does these little ticks over here. And that makes it always work in MySQL. Sometimes it works without them though. So I'm just going to take this, copy and paste it into here. I'm just going to run this code here. And this is 3 separate lines, so I'm going to run first one, second one. Oh, it's giving me duplicate entry. Let me see here. Oh, I made 30 employees. That's funny. Okay, so let me do 31, 32, 33. Well, this is a great example actually, because it's showing that when you manually try and enter things with data, you're prone to making mistakes. But our primary key constraint prevented me from accidentally putting in a duplicate primary key entry. So that's actually kind of nice. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to copy these again. Now it has the correct primary keys. We'll go back here, delete that. So all this did is that it created the SQL code for us to enter in there. So I'm just going to run this one. Looks like it worked. And run that last one. And there we go. Example employee. Now that data is there. So you could do the same thing for example project and example project employee. For example, right now, example project employee, because I just added employees 31, 32, 33, they won't appear in here unless I add them in. So right now they're not going to ever show up as belonging to a specific project because I haven't created the data that connects them to that. So hopefully with this quick example that gives you something to work with. I'll post the files so you can follow along with us. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.